Thank you for joining us for the Go Virtual Career Pathways Conference. I'm Cindy Dunleavy from the San Diego County Office of Education. I'll be your Zoom host today. Please use the Q&A for questions if you have any during this presentation. And I would now like to introduce and turn it over to Agent Rocky. Thank you for coming, Agent Rocky.
No, it's my pleasure. Guys, it's great for me to be here with you today. This is hard for me. The first time I've done a lecture to students, through Zoom. I prefer to be there with you and to look at your faces and get your energy. But I'll do the best I can for you today. I've been a DEA agent, Drug Enforcement Administration agent, for about 30 years. I grew up in San Diego, and the family had a plan for me to become a lawyer. And I got out of undergraduate and just wasn't feeling it, didn't want to be a lawyer. And I looked around and law enforcement interested me. And I put an application in with DEA, and at 23, I got hired to become a federal drug agent. And they put me back to work in San Diego on the streets. And I'll talk a little bit about my career as we go through this. But my plan at the time when I was 23 was that I would be a DEA agent for 3 or 4 years. And then I would set that aside and go to law school or probably go to law school and become a prosecutor. And 30 years later, I'm still here because I love the work I'm doing. And I've given about 600 of these presentations to students in 15 countries to about 130,000 students. And I never dreamt that I'd reach that many young people. And I don't know how many of you are going to listen. I hope you all do. I'm pretty sure that some of the things I'm going to show you and tell you today are things that you haven't seen or heard before. No matter how much you think you know about drugs, I've been living this for 30 years. And there's things I've seen and things I've been around, things I've done that you haven't seen. So this is a very real presentation. Sometimes students get triggered by this because I'm talking about things that they're living in their lives, things they've experienced. And that makes me unhappy, but at the same time, I have to be real with you. And there's nothing in here that's not real. And I'm going to go for about an hour, which may seem like a long time, but I'm going to rush, get in all my information. And at the end, if any of you can, I would love it if you sent me questions or criticisms or comments, because I need you guys to make me better. Because your world, the world that you're in right now, is changing, and I'm not part of it. And for me to be relevant to future student audiences, I need each audience to tell me, what I got right and what I didn't get right. So I'm going to try and put up my PowerPoint and hope that it works for us. Oops. And the program that I'm doing is a partnership with the County Office of Education, the people putting on this virtual seminar. And it's a beautiful partnership because they have seen the value in this education program and are trying to get us out into as many schools as possible. The program I give is called I Choose My Future. And DEA gave me that little silly hand sign, which looks a little bit like the loser sign. I understand that, but it doesn't mean that. What it means is that your future is your choice. Simple. There's all sorts of things that you may want in life. And if you want them, you're going to have to make decisions now to get those things. And drug abuse, of course, is a choice that people make. They make it long enough and it stops being a choice. But the whole point of this presentation is to get you to understand that you can make choices that we can't prevent you from making, but you're going to have to deal with the consequences of those choices.
Now, as I was saying, drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs. If you do them, you're bad, because drugs are bad, okay? It's a bad thing to do drugs, so don't be bad by doing drugs, okay? That'd be bad. Drugs are bad, okay?
And this is what people think I'm doing. When they think I go to a school, they think I stand up in front and tell you drugs are bad, like Mr. Mackey. And while unfortunately I do look a little bit like Mr. Mackey, I've been told, that's not what's going to happen today. You wouldn't listen to that. That would bore you. And that is most definitely not what I'm here to do today. I begin every presentation touching on the memory of this DEA agent, Kiki Camarena. He was a hero of mine. He was working in Mexico back in 1985, the year I was graduating high school in San Diego. And he was kidnapped by the drug traffickers and tortured for several days and murdered. And what happened to him shocked me. It shocked the country. It started the whole Red Ribbon movement. If you ever had a Red Ribbon assembly in school, that was in his memory. But he's been forgotten by many, and I always touch on his memory, and I'm proud to carry the same badge that he carried. And I put this picture in just to show you that, in fact, I've been doing this job for a long time. That's me when I started. The guy in the back there is my first partner, taught me how to do the job. So I've spent 30 years of my life seeing what drugs do to people at the individual level, at the community level, within the school, within our country, and even internationally. And these are some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. So hopefully you can see the drug abuse problem through my eyes and learn a little bit from me rather than having to learn it through your own bad experiences. I started out in the streets of San Diego. This is my first enforcement group. These are the folks that taught me how to do the job, and they taught me well. And to do our job, you work 7 days a week. You work when the drug traffickers are working. And I loved it. I was happy to work 7 days a week. They asked for 5. I worked bunch free because I enjoy catching drug traffickers and putting them in prison because that's where they belong. Because drug traffickers are people that are selling poison to you and your families. After 8 years of hard work, however, I got the beautiful assignment of being sent to Santa Cruz, Bolivia in South America. And when I was preparing to go to Bolivia, they taught me Spanish and trained me in Washington for a bit. And they told me that I was going to Bolivia to help them solve their problem. That's what everyone said, that I was going to Bolivia to help them solve their problem, which made sense to me at the time until I got there. This is a picture of a group of police officers that I worked with. But this is what I saw and did for 6 years, chasing the drug traffickers out in the jungle, trying to find these laboratories where they were manufacturing the cocaine, where they were storing it, where the landing strips were. And seeing all this environmental destruction and the poverty and the corruption and the crime that Bolivia suffers under changed me, because I realized very quickly, this is not their problem. That drug laboratory that we set on fire before we took our little silly trophy picture was paid for by American drug users because that cocaine was destined for here. And I had to process the fact that it was my country, people in my country, causing all this harm that I was fighting against all those years in Bolivia. I've done bigger cases. I'm super proud of the people I work with. One of the guys in this picture is the guy that got Chapo both times. I have some really good friends. I survived. And I'm proud that I survived, happy that I survived. Not everyone did. And I'm still active. Yeah, even after all these years, I'm still out there trying to arrest people. These are methamphetamine seizures, recent ones on the border with Mexico. Now, 10 years ago, if I seized 10 pounds of methamphetamine, that was considered a major seizure, a big seizure. These are 80-pound, 100-pound seizures that we're getting every day, and it doesn't seem to be making a difference. In the last month, we've had some 3,000-pound seizures, which just makes my mind blow, because we're seizing a lot, but we're not seizing a big percentage of what comes through. And most of it we don't get. And that means there's millions of Americans out there, millions of us, paying money to put this toxic poison in their bodies. And that freaks me out. Makes me sad, freaks me out, confuses me. This is the case from last year. This banana boat was bringing bananas from Ecuador up to Los Angeles. I got a tip there was cocaine on it. We searched it for a couple of days, and I found a couple 100 kilos of cocaine on the ship. Didn't arrest anybody that day, but I took a couple $1 million of drugs away from a Colombian drug trafficker. I pissed him off. And it still makes me happy to piss off the drug traffickers taking their money and taking their drugs. And these are my girls. They're everything to me. They're the reason that I do everything that I do. My oldest is 25 and my youngest is 20. And my younger one in the purple there was 11 when she started smoking weed. She would go stay at her best friend's house every weekend to get away from her mean older sisters, which made sense to me. I knew the family, I knew the home, good parents, professionals. What I didn't know is they had a teenage son who liked to smoke weed, and those parents made a decision they would rather have their son smoke weed at home with them. They thought that was safer. What they didn't understand is telling the 17-year-old son it was okay, told the 11-year-old daughter it was okay for her too. So she would steal weed from her brother and smoke it with my daughter every weekend, all through 6th and 7th grade. And I didn't learn this until my daughter was 17. We got into a big argument about something. I made some accusations that I suspected she was using drugs, and she looked at me and said, "Dad, I don't use drugs anymore." And I said, "Please explain." And she told me the story. And I said, "Well, when did you stop?" And she said she stopped at 12. And I asked her why. And she told me, God bless her, she told me that at 12 years old, she recognized that just marijuana was changing her personality, her motivation. It was changing who she was, and she didn't like it. So she stopped. Her best friend, who had all the potential in the world, didn't stop, adopted the whole marijuana culture, got pregnant, dropped out of high school at 16. Now she's raising a beautiful baby as a single mom. No family is immune from these challenges. I paid close attention to what my daughters have seen through middle school, high school, and now college and after. And it's a scary world that you guys live in. I worry about my daughters and I worry about you. These are just very quickly pictures of some of the places I've been able to go with my presentation. Nobody else in DEA is doing this quite like I do. When I can talk to little guys, I do, because when I go to juvenile hall and I lecture the kids in prison, I ask them, when did you start using drugs? And they all tell me 8, 9, 10, which breaks my heart. But every time I go, they tell me the same thing. So that tells me that a lot of you may have been in the same situation where somebody's offering you drugs at 8, 9, 10 years old, and you didn't get any information. You had no information or preparation to make an informed decision, to make that choice. And we as a society have decided that drug prevention like this that I'm doing right now isn't really appropriate until someone's in middle school or high school. And that to me is very sad and cruel, because that means a lot of kids, younger kids, are having to make very, very hard decisions and they have no preparation. Like I said, I've gone to 15 countries, and it doesn't matter where I go, the students get my message. I'm fluent in Spanish and I present in Spanish, but the students understand exactly what I'm saying because they're watching all the same garbage on TV and on the internet and the music videos that you guys are. They're listening to all the same fools tell them that drug use is cool. And I explain to them, it is not that cool, like I'm going to explain to you. And I don't know how many of you are going to change your attitudes, but I'm confident that a few of you at least will change your attitudes, and that's enough for me. I have the coolest job on the planet. I get to go do stuff like this. They pay me to go do stuff like this. And everywhere I go, even to countries that aren't very, very friendly to the United States, I make the point that I'm a proud patriot. I love this country. I'm proud to serve it, proud to protect it, and proud to have made an oath to uphold the Constitution. And but as much as I love the country, I'm not blind and I'm not stupid. And I can look around and I can see lots of things that we're doing to ourselves and we're doing to other people that make me sad, make me ashamed of us. And I think you can have both of those sentiments. I think you can love your country at the same time work to make your country better in the ways that you can. And I'm going to hope that all of you do the same. It's not an accident that we have this prosperous, successful country, and every generation needs to step up and work to maintain that. And that includes you guys. And this is the problem that brings us together today. And this is something that I deal with every day. For reasons I'll never understand, we're one of the richest, freest countries in the world, and yet we're also the biggest drug consuming country on the planet. We have the most people using drugs, we spend the most money on drugs, we have the most people overdosing on drugs, we have the most people in addiction treatment, we have the most babies being born addicted to drugs. No matter what category you look at, we're number one in the world in drug abuse. Don't know why. Doesn't make sense, but it's true. Sadly, it's very true. I have to explain something basic to you. You may have been told that drug use is a victimless crime. I've heard this many times, but I have to tell you the reality. And right now, the way the world is, if you buy drugs, it's simply the act of buying drugs, you're handing money over to a series of people that money's gonna be used to cause violence. Because if you're buying cocaine in San Diego, the guy selling it to you didn't make it, he's your local drug dealer. So you meet up with him, you give him a few $100 and he gives you a few grams of coke and you're happy, he's happy. But he takes that $100 and buys more from his drug dealer, who buys more from her drug dealer, and so on, until that $100 gets to Tijuana in the case of San Diego. And now that your $100 is in the hands of the cartel down in Tijuana, using it for all that violence. And if you didn't know, Tijuana, for the second year in a row, was named the most violent city on the planet. Not some city in Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan. Tijuana, our beautiful neighbor to the south, second year in a row, most violent city on the planet because of all the drug violence paid for by American drug users who tell people, I'm not hurting anybody, I know what I'm doing. But then they didn't make the cocaine there either. So they send that $100 down to Central America, where the traffickers and the gangs use it to kill my friends and the police every day to protect their drug shipments. And then they send that $100 down to Colombia or Peru or Bolivia, where it causes violence. This is a very sad picture for me. I've spoken at this police academy in Colombia. And last year, some guy drove a car bomb in and murdered 21 young police cadets just trying to serve their country. This is a picture of 9 of those beautiful kids. And what makes me so upset is that that bomb was from a drug organization, and that means that ultimately it was paid for by American drug users. I need to explain to you something about your brains. Our body is full of organs that keep us alive and get us from one place to the other, but there's a special organ in the body called the brain that defines who we are as human beings. Every single bit of our humanity is contained in that brain. And the brain is a very sensitive organ, and it operates on still mysterious chemical processes. We don't even begin to understand how it does what it does. Right? So everything that makes you you, everything you think, you remember, you feel, you dream, is handled up in these very fragile chemical processes up in your brain. Drugs and alcohol are chemicals we put in our bodies to change how the brain is working. That's what the high is. You put a chemical into your body to change how it works. And it does for a few hours. Put you up or put you down, whatever the drug is, it'll take you where you want it to go. But guys, I need you to think about something. As an adolescent, from about 13 to early 20s, your brain is growing dramatically. That's why every year in school you get harder material and more independence, because your brain's more capable. If you're using drugs and alcohol at this age, to change how your brain is functioning, I hope that you can see how you might be changing how it grows, because I think that's what's happening. If you're changing how it's working while it's trying to grow, you're going to change its growth. And that's the brain you're stuck with for the rest of your life. It's something else very basic. If you want to know what your future is going to be, look at the choices. You don't get to be an idiot and ignore school and misbehave and not listen to people trying to guide you and party until you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever, and then snap your fingers and decide to be successful. It doesn't work that way. If you want to be successful, you start now. If you want to be successful in athletics, you eat well, you train, you sleep, academics, you study, you work hard. Whatever your dream in life is, set the goal and make decisions that are in alignment with that goal. Make decisions that will help you get to the goal, not decisions that will hold you back. And drug abuse is the single fastest way, easiest way that any of you will ever destroy your own dreams. Not mine. I'm living my dream. Being able to give this presentation to you today is my dream. It doesn't matter to me if you like it or not, but I've accomplished my life. I want you to accomplish your life. I don't want you to become statistics. I don't want you to be full of regret and remorse later in life because you listened to some fool who said, come on, hey, look what I got, let's do this. And you make these choices that end up changing your lives. And now in my travels as a drug agent, I've learned some things. These are what I call the laws. And the first law is it almost always starts as a choice. And you know this very well. You don't go to the party and someone shows up with a drug and says, hey, use this or I'm going to beat you up. That's not what happens. It didn't happen to me. It didn't happen to my daughters. It's not happening to you. Someone shows up, maybe someone you know, someone you admire, shows up with something and says, hey, look what I got. Let's do this. And those are some of the most dangerous words in the English language. And you have to make a decision. Are you going to do it or not? Can't make it for you guys. I'm not going to be there. And it's your choice to make it and put it in your body, but it's also going to be your consequence if it doesn't go well. Second law, the people that make drug use part of their life that keep doing it, change, and not in good ways. Drug use over time, even if it's just marijuana or alcohol or other much harder drugs, sooner or later it will change you in negative ways. That's how the world is. And number three, those negative consequences that come to the drug user never, ever, ever just affect the drug user. That student who becomes pregnant at 16 and drops out of school, like my daughter's friend, that impacts the entire family, her future, her children. The young person who overdoses, that affects a whole bunch more people than just that drug user. So I'm going to ask you guys to be thinking about these bigger consequences to what you might do. And the messaging, I already mentioned this, but since you guys are babies, you've been getting messaging that drug use is cool. Since you're babies, you've been seeing ads for prescription drugs on TV telling you there's a prescription drug that'll solve every single problem you have. You can't watch a movie or TV show made for young people that doesn't have the message in it that drug use is cool, that everybody does it, that it's harmless. I can't blame you for thinking that's the truth, but it's not. Those are all lies. And I'm going to show you these pictures to try and illustrate that. And these are real photos from Ohio from a few years ago. This dad and the girlfriend are driving around town with a 4-year-old in the back seat. The dad and the girlfriend are heroin users, so they inject heroin in the car in front of the kid and they drive around. And sadly, as too often happens, the woman injected too much heroin and started to overdose, like you see her in the car. And her boyfriend panicked and tried to get her to the hospital. And as he was driving, he also began to overdose and he passed out at the wheel. The vehicle went out of control, almost crashed. And this is how police found the vehicle. And when I saw these pictures for the first time, the little boy's face was pixelated. You couldn't see it. And I really wanted to see what was on that little boy's face in the middle of this nightmare. I mean, that little kid's sitting there thinking his dad's dead, girlfriend's dead. You can see the police officer's arm coming through the window. And I'm thinking, shock, fear, tears, something. So I dug deep in the internet to find the original picture. And I was a little shocked to see that there's no emotion of any kind on that kid's face. And if we were here in person, I would ask you to give me reasons how that could be. But my belief is it's because he hasn't seen this. This is not the first time he's seen this. This is his normal. And I think that's pretty severe emotional damage in a 4-year-old to not be reacting. He knows something's really wrong, guys. Don't think he doesn't know something's really wrong. He's just used to it. Severe emotional damage in that 4-year-old boy, not his fault, not his choice, his dad's choice, consequence of his dad's choice. This story kills me every time I tell it. This beautiful mom raising that beautiful little boy, look how strong he looks. Back in Philadelphia, she was a heroin user as well. She shot up heroin in bed. They lived alone. She shot up heroin and overdosed and died. And she didn't suffer. She just went to sleep that night. 3 weeks later, the police opened the apartment and they found that he had died as well. And they determined he died of dehydration, which is a horrible, slow, agonizing way for someone to go. And as if that weren't bad enough, the story gets worse for me, because the local police did an investigation. They talked to the neighbors, and not one but several of the neighbors said they'd heard screaming for days, but then it stopped, which means several of the neighbors heard this little baby screaming for help, begging for somebody to come save him, and no one did. Not the apartment manager, no one called the police, no one did anything. And these are not like these crazy, rare, worst case scenarios I had to dig to find. You can find headlines like these almost daily now across our country. One of the richest, most prosperous countries in the world, and these are daily headlines now. This young mom's taking her daughter to the store, probably going to buy a kid a treat, uses a little drugs out in the parking lot. What could go wrong? Takes her daughter in the store and ODs. And the video to this is too harsh for me even to show you guys, but that little toddler is there tugging at her mommy, trying to get her off the floor. And that's what I'm fighting against. And it's a tough battle, because it's hard to get you guys to put yourselves in that situation and imagine this could be you. But trust me, this could be me if I tried the drugs. I'm not going there. I don't know how strong my brain is, and I'm never going to find out. When I started working in DEA, we were losing about 10,000 people a year to overdose. And that seemed like a crazy big number back in 1990. When I started doing these talks in 1997, the number was about 35,000, and that freaked me out. When I learned that, I was shocked, and I thought, man, the country is going to react. We can't accept this. We're going to change. And man, was I naive, because 13 years later, there were 72,000 dead last year in this country. And we're not doing anything different. There's no big program to get you guys information about this stuff. I'm not there having to bang on the door of schools to get a chance to give you an hour. In a year, I'll get a chance to give you an hour of information to fight back against this. So I'm ashamed of us as a country. I'm confused by this. I don't know how big the death number has to get before we react. It has to reach 100,000 people or 250,000 people. I don't know. I don't know if you've studied history, but if you've studied 20th century history, we had 4 major wars that we fought, 19 years of global warfare, and we lost a total of 634,000 soldiers killed in those 19 years of global warfare. But if you were to go from this year back 19 years, we have lost over 700,000 Americans to drug overdose. 700,000 American men, women, and children dead, not killed by some foreign enemy on a foreign battlefield, but killed by the enemy within us that makes us so willing to poison ourselves. And now I'm going to show you a video that I made, and it's pictures of people who died from overdoses. And as you watch this, I want you to look at their smiles and think about how tragic each loss is, and to think about the loss of human potential in each of these people.
Should have stayed. Were the signs I ignored? Can I help you not to hurt anymore? We saw brilliance when the world was asleep. There are things that we can have but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. The reminders pull the floor from your feet. In the kitchen, one more chair than you need. Oh, and you're not fair. Just 'cause you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. Well, I do.
Guys, I created that video, and I had to dig up all those pictures on the internet, and I've watched it, 100 times, and it still crushes me to watch this. And 72,000 people or more now with COVID, I think it may be even worse. 72,000 or more people this year will perish from drugs. So unnecessarily and needlessly. And I don't want you or anybody you care about to be one of those people. The biggest single threat to you guys today is these fake pharmaceutical pills. Years ago, I spent years in DEA going after people trying to abuse legitimate prescription drugs from pharmacies. Americans want these drugs, and many of the prescription drugs work just like the street drugs. But the drug traffickers are about making money. And 5-6 years ago, the drug traffickers realized that it was kind of expensive and difficult to get legitimate prescription pills to sell them to people on the street. So they started manufacturing their own. So the biggest single drug threat we have in the United States, I think even globally right now, are these fake pills made to look like they came from a pharmacy. These are pills that I seized coming up from Tijuana last year. And when they started making these pills 7 years ago now, they were using heroin in the pills. Instead of whatever it was supposed to be, instead of a Vicodin or a Xanax, it was heroin. And that's pretty horrible on its own, selling high school kids a Xanax, which is actually heroin. But they discovered they could make a lot more profit if they switched out other drugs. And most of the death today in America is caused by this drug fentanyl. That little white dot on that penny is enough to overdose me. I'm a 200-pound male, and that's enough to kill me. And that's what's showing up in the pills at the parties that you're going to with your friends and your brothers and sisters or whoever. And incredibly, we're now seeing more and more carfentanil, that drug on the right. That little microscopic white dot that you can barely see is enough to overdose me. And this sounds like something I'm making up, but I'm not. Carfentanil is used by veterinarians as an elephant tranquilizer. So if a veterinarian wants to do surgery on an elephant, they give it a little bit of carfentanil, and that giant elephant goes to sleep right now. So what do you think is going to happen if you or a friend takes that Xanax that's actually got carfentanil in it, and it's just got a tiny bit too much? You're going to go to sleep, and you're not going to wake up. And this, for me, is the most important slide in my entire presentation. If there's one thing you remember, one thing you take in for yourself, one thing you share with your friends, this is why these pills are so deadly. And I'm not arresting the people manufacturing these things. I talk to these people. But when I'm in a pharmaceutical company, I'm a scientist and I'm legitimate and I'm regulated by the government. So I take the green material, which is called a binder. It's most of what goes into a pill. And I mix it with a sugar. It's a sugar. And I mix it with the red stuff, which is the drug. And I know how to mix it properly. So when I make my pills, each pill has the same dose. That's how you know what you're getting from the pharmacy. But if I'm making these things in my garage, or they're being made at some drug lab down in Mexico, most people don't know what they're doing. They're not scientists. So they take their binder and they mix in the fentanyl or carfentanil or both or whatever's in there, and they blend it. but they don't know how to blend it properly. They don't have the right machinery equipment. And when they make the pills, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, some of the pills have none of the drug, some have a little bit of the drug, and some have enough to kill a horse. And what's so terrifying to me is that all these pills look exactly the same. The people making these drugs don't know which ones have no drug and which ones have too much. They don't have the means to test them, so they just sell them all. And then someone else sells them and someone else sells them, and eventually they make it to the party. And it's only at the party where you go with your friends that someone takes one of these things and you learn that there were deadly pills. And you could have a party with 20 people taking these pills and all seem to be fine. That doesn't mean you're not going to be the one that reaches in that bag and takes out the one that's deadly. You know, if somebody's offering you a drug, they're always going to tell you two things: it's good and it's safe. It's good and it's safe. Trust me. And they're lying to you. And you have to remember this. We play this little game. I'll go through it quickly. Now, which is the real Beyonce? Pretty easy. This is number one, right? Which is the real Nike? But now you're at the party, lights are low, people are drinking, smoking weed, which is the pill that can kill you. But remember, the person offering you this pill is telling you it's good and safe. I know it's safe, don't worry about it. These are oxycodone, very popular right now, very dangerous. And this should be easy for you guys now. Which ones are the fakes? Yep, I cheated you. And I'm cheating you in this little game because it's just a game. And I want you to understand something. There are people right now out in the world playing this game for real. The drug traffickers cheat, and they're going to cheat you in life. And if you are willing to play the game today, if you're willing to go out and take drugs from someone at a party just because they promise you it's safe, you're playing this game. And you may lose the first time. Those two 13-year-olds that you saw in the video, they ordered some stuff off the internet from China. It came to their house. They used it and they died the first time they used it. Parents used to scare kids and tell them that using drugs one time would ruin your life. Actually, guys, you live in a world and your future is going to be a future in which the first time you use something, you could actually die, or your best friend could die, or your boyfriend or girlfriend could die. And then you have to live with the horrible pain of realizing you didn't stop them from making that stupid, obviously stupid choice. This professional baseball player, Tyler Skaggs, on top of the world, starting pitcher for the Angels, had a habit of taking these pills. Thought he knew what he was doing until last year he took a fake one and he's gone. Guy took 10 pills to a party, killed 10 of his friends. A gang in Oakland was making these fake Xanax out of heroin and selling them into schools 5 years ago. These are drugs we seized in San Diego. This is what it looks like. This is what our laboratory found out was in all those. I'm not making any of this up. You may be thinking I'm trying to scare you. I can't show you the real pictures. I can't take you to the overdose scenes and show you what it looks like. So I have to show you these pictures, hoping that some of you are thinking and respecting yourselves and your futures a little bit. You guys live in scary times like my daughters. These young women in college or on spring break somewhere taking a selfie video. They've been drinking and being stupid, but they weren't looking for trouble. So they're filming themselves. And later that day, they watched the video and they saw this. And that is a man in the middle of the day in front of hundreds of people putting a drug in their drink. I'm guessing it's because he wanted to rape them, some kind of a date rape drug. And it's my job to try and stop these guys. And my job's gotten really hard because of the internet. They're getting this stuff from all over the world. And I tell my daughters, and I'm telling you, you can't go to a party at a friend's house or a beach or a club and not be worried that there's somebody like this trying to hurt you. Male or female, doesn't matter. There are predatory humans out there. And you have to have a plan of where you have to think about where you're going. You have to have a plan who you're going with, and you have to have a plan to look out for each other. Because again, we're not going to be there to look out for you if something goes wrong. And after 30 years in DEA, guys, I'm kind of burned out on certain aspects of the job. The paperwork gets down, but I'm still motivated because if I do my job right, once in a while, I get to arrest the people responsible for this. Now, in the United States, we have literally hundreds of thousands of babies born every year damaged by substances their mothers were using while pregnant. Fetal alcohol babies, marijuana babies now, crack babies, meth babies. But I'm just going to talk about the heroin and pill babies. Because every year in this country, we estimate about 35,000 babies are born addicted to the heroin or the pills their mothers were taking. Now, these mothers all know they're drugging their babies. They all know what they're doing, but they've made a choice because they're terrified of withdrawal sickness and they're terrified of the pain that comes with withdrawal sickness. So instead of experiencing the withdrawal sickness themselves to make sure their babies are born healthy, they're going to let their babies deal with it. And on the first day of life, when the umbilical cord is cut, these beautiful, precious, innocent babies begin to experience the same agony and pain of withdrawal. It's not baby withdrawal, it's full-blown adult withdrawal. They twitch and they scream and they suffer. And doctors in our country give them the drug morphine on their first day to try to take away some of that pain.
A crying baby is always unsettling. And it's even worse when you know the baby, like this little girl, just days old, is in pain. Her jittery shakes and her shrill cry are very distinctive, and they last for days. Doctors know exactly what's to blame.
Heroin.
Now, that 35,000 babies a year, and this has been going on forever, and it makes me so sad about us. And I ask myself, who are we as a culture that we accept this? We don't talk about this. This is not a secret, but we don't talk about it. And I happen to believe if we're not talking about it, we're not looking for solutions. So I guess as a society, we accept 75,000 people a year dying, and we accept 35,000 babies a year being born like this. But I hope you don't accept it. I don't accept it. I refuse. This is how I'm fighting back. And sometimes I feel tired, and sometimes I feel like none of you are listening. But I'm hoping that you'll join me and use your influence with yourself and your friends and your families to help people avoid these problems. And just so you understand what morphine is, I say they're using morphine. Well, what is morphine? These are my wounded warrior friends. I get to work with wounded warriors here in San Diego. And my young friend with the titanium legs there stepped on a landmine in Afghanistan, and it blew his legs off mid-thigh. When he landed on the ground without his legs, his fellow soldiers ran over and gave him morphine. So just reflect on that for a moment. The same drug that we give a man literally blown in half on a battlefield, we have to give to more than 35,000 babies, newborn babies in our country every year because of the choices their mothers are making, and we're not working to stop that. But we in law enforcement have a specific role, is to arrest their drug traffickers, take their money, take their drugs. I'm good at it. I was trained well. I like doing it. We in the DEA are good at it, but we've learned something. Every drug trafficker we arrest, there's two more stepping up to get the money. As long as you and people in this country are willing to buy it, someone will step up to sell it. My friend who arrested Chapo both times is my biggest supporter in giving these talks because he knows there's already 5 more guys trying to become the next Chapo in Mexico. If the United States is going to throw billions of dollars in money at these drug traffickers, they're going to stand up and take it and cause violence and cause mayhem and harm. This is the reality, guys. You know, the party will happen. You'll get high for a few hours and it'll be great fun. But then the drug wears off, and what's waiting for you the next day? And sadly, many of you have already probably lived the consequences. If you've been victims of a crime, most property crime in this country is somebody stealing your stuff to get money for drugs. Some of you live in poverty or may know people living in poverty because your parents are substance abusers. And all the money that should be spent raising the kids is spent on substance abuse. Too many broken families. Too many young people growing up in terrible home situations, neglected by their parents because one or both are substance abusers, and those children have to raise themselves. And then child abuse. I've seen far too many kids who've been beaten by their parents, and mom because she gets high and gets angry, or dad because he can't get high and gets angry, and they take it out on the kids. This is the reality that you don't see in the internet. This is the reality you don't see in the music video or in the movies. But it's very, very much the daily reality for far too many people in this country and around the world. Smartphones. I am not a fan. I got a picture up there with one like a drug. Smartphones have changed me. They've changed my daughters. They've changed your world. They're creating way more anxiety, way more isolation. You guys all know somebody that's got 1,000 social media friends and not one real friend. And far too many teenagers now, when they deal with the normal, sad, difficult parts in life, don't really know how to communicate it really with people. And they turn to drugs to self-medicate, to hide from life. A big problem for us all. And every hardcore drug user I've ever met who's ruined their life and caused immeasurable pain, I ask them when they started and how and why. And they all tell me they started for fun. Every single person who's ruined their life that I've met, and I don't respect boundaries. I ask these people all sorts of questions. They all tell me they were 12 or 15 or 18 or 20 or whatever, and they started for fun for some reason, or because it made them feel good, right? But if they do it long enough, they discover that the medicine works in ways. If they're depressed or anxious or have low self-esteem or bad body image or whatever it is, the drugs make that go away. And far too many people discover that they can hide from life by using drugs, and they tell themselves that they're just doing it for fun and they can stop whenever they want. And I don't care who you are. You do it long enough and you start doing the self-medication, which is really what you're doing. You're using drugs to hide from life. And then very quickly you become addicted. And then the drugs own you and you're not in control anymore. These are pictures of some smuggling cases just to show you how creative the drug traffickers are. This woman was coming through the airport in Bolivia with a ticket to Spain, had a kilo of cocaine braided in her wig. It looked silly, but I talked to her that day and she told me she had made 4 trips successfully. We caught her the 5th time. I used to see this on the border with Tijuana a long time ago. The drug traffickers would find a young woman and they would pay her to put this on. They'd fill the belly with drugs, dress her very nicely and send her across the border as a pregnant woman. And the border inspectors back then were unwilling to touch the belly of a pregnant woman. Case of mine, group of drug traffickers east of San Diego in Mexico were looking for runaway white and black kids to be the drivers of these vehicles. And back then the border fence was about 3 feet tall and they had these ramps. So they would just throw these homemade ramps up and these vehicles with 1,000 pounds of weed would jump over the border and drive in the US. So they would hire these runaway kids from Temecula, these white and black kids, to drive these vehicles. And you know, these are kids who were begging for money and the traffickers say, hey, I'll give you $1,000, $2,000, you work a day for me. And all these kids said, yeah, and went to work for a Mexican cartel. This is a sad x-ray. This is a young man in South America who was desperate to get out of South America. This guy in Colombia was desperate to have the chance to live somewhere like the United States or Europe, where he would have some of the economic opportunities that you all have, that he would have the chance to build his life like you all do. And the drug traffickers take advantage of these young people and they offered him a deal he couldn't refuse, a plane ticket, a passport, and a few $100s, and a chance to live in Europe in exchange for swallowing some packages of cocaine, which he did and got on the airplane. Sadly for him, one of the packages burst open. He died of an overdose. He didn't suffer. Another case of mine in Bolivia, this 19-year-old was coming through airport security. He'd made the same deal, also going to Spain, but they had gotten him blocked up inside him. So I had to take him to surgery and I watched as the doctors cut him open and pulled out 96 packages of cocaine the size of my thumb that he'd swallowed. It was horrifying. That's definitely not something you want to see from a human being. And this happens all the time. This is happening every day. To get the drugs here so you can take them at the party because it doesn't hurt anybody. It's a victimless crime. And now in San Diego, we have this nightmare. The traffickers are using high school students to recruit their classmates to body carry the drugs because they can pay kids pennies to do this. And they find students who need money. These are students who live in Tijuana and who can cross the border and go to school in San Diego. So they find students who want to help mom pay the rent or the family's got some kind of problem. They say, look, we'll solve your problem. We'll give you the drugs in Tijuana. You wrap it on your body, bring it to school tomorrow. It's easy, no problem. And these are all teenagers we arrested at the border with Mexico. These are all major quantities of drugs. And I can tell you lots of stories about the kids who've gotten themselves in terrible trouble, and I don't have time today. But I don't want our high schools to be places where major drug transactions are happening. I want high schools to be places where you guys are safe, you can learn, you can grow, and not be targeted by drug traffickers. There are hundreds of drugs out there that you could choose to put in your bodies to harm yourselves. I don't have time today to talk about many of those, but I will talk about methamphetamine. It's been the #1 killer in San Diego for more than 30 years. Fentanyl is now catching up. The methamphetamine for 30 years has killed more people in San Diego than any other drug. Now it comes in these pretty white crystals. It looks so safe. They look like rock candy. The person offering it says, oh, it's good and it's safe. Don't worry about it. Trust me. What you don't see are the contaminants. You wouldn't eat food if you knew that it had been made in some junkyard garage. You wouldn't eat it. But somebody shows up at a party with a drug that you know is made somewhere crappy and filthy, and you turn off your brain and you go, okay, cool. But this is what's in there that's going to harm you. Because when you take the drug, all this stuff is getting in your body as well. These are real methamphetamine users. Now methamphetamine is a stimulant. It's a drug that makes you feel powerful and strong. That's why people like using it. They feel energized. But look what happened to these people over time. These are people who were arrested, pictures were taken to jail, they got back out of jail, and then they were arrested again. 3 months and 11 months. So this drug, this Superman drug that they took to feel good, look what it does to them. And they keep using it. These people are all somebody's child, somebody's brother, sister, somebody's parent. And you can tell they don't care. They've given up control of their lives to using that meth. I've seen this so many times in my career. It just depresses me every single time. Lady on the left looks a little crazy already. No, this lady shocks me. It says 3 years, 5 months. It looks to me like it's a hard 35 years that she's lived. In the first picture, she looks like she could be a school teacher. You know, she might be somebody's mom. And in 3 years, she's destroyed herself. And I promise you, she's looked at herself in the mirror hundreds or thousands of times in those 3 years. And she said to herself, you know what, I'm done. This is killing me. I'm going to stop. And she meant it. She told herself she was done. She made a decision she was done. But the way it works is she'd given up control. And her own brain, sooner or later, said, oh, no, no, no. No, no, I decide now. give me more of my drug. Do what you have to do. Go sell your body or sell drugs or hurt people to get money to get the drug that I want in my brain. This is what it does to people's teeth. And they keep using. This is what the labs look like. Breaking Bad is a gigantic lie. It's a lie that was told to you. Too many people think this is where the drugs come from by some PhD biochemist in a clean laboratory. This is the lab as we find it. This is where the stuff is made. None of you would eat food that came from kitchens this disgusting and filthy, but too many people are willing to take the chemicals that come from these places and put them in the bodies. There is no quality control. There's no quality measurement. There are no safety measures. Just mixing a bunch of poisons together to get a drug that works well enough they can sell it to you. If you take it and you die, or if you take it and damage important parts of your bodies, they don't care. They've got your money. And people tell me, oh, that's not true, Rocky. The people making this don't want to kill their customers. Well, guys, I've already explained to you, the people making this stuff, they're 10 steps removed from the people using it. The person making that meth or making the fentanyl pills, they have no connection to the people that end up dying down the road. They don't care. They've already got their money. Very expensive to clean up these places. They're toxic waste sites. When we go in spacesuits and they wash us off when we're done. And every time I go, I just can't believe that people, pay money. I've got a clean home and a clean body. I'm not getting this stuff anywhere near me. And yet millions of people in this country apparently pay money to put this stuff on purpose into their bodies. So this is a video of a real meth lab raid. Welcome to my world for a couple minutes.
Heather, I love you, baby. I love you, honey. I love you, Heather. Hey. So what's the point of this, guys? What exactly are you up?
They were making meth in that house, just like those other pictures I showed you. And we go in spacesuits like that and prepared for violence because the people in the lab are breathing in all the chemicals and all the drugs and they're not thinking right. So it's very dangerous for them, for us to go into these places. And of course, that entire home is toxic, it's poisoned. And that little baby crawling around is soaking up all those poisons and toxins into its little body. So that baby goes to Child Protective Services, it goes to doctors to get evaluated, and goes to a judge to decide what better family can raise that kid, because those kids get taken away from these parents. And you can see it, nice neighborhoods. And they don't want us coming through the front door like this. So they don't stay long. They rent a house and they cook their drugs for 6 months or however long, and they move to stay away from us, stay ahead of us. But do you think after they poison that house, they leave a note behind for the next family, like, hey, caution, we had a meth lab here? And of course they don't. So you move in with your beautiful family and your healthy babies, and all of a sudden you and your children start getting sick inexplicably. And now doctors around the country understand that if a family moves into a new home and gets sick for reasons we can't figure out, they'll send technicians out to see if there was a meth lab in it. Or now it's a fentanyl lab, which is even more dangerous. And I'll finish about everybody's favorite topic, marijuana and vaping. Super popular with you guys today, with your generation. I don't get it. We had lots of good education when I was a kid, showing us what smoking does to your lungs. Lungs are also kind of important. They're also kind of fragile. You want them to be strong for as long as you can. And those lungs, these are lungs from dead people. The lungs on the left came from someone who's a healthy non-smoker, and the lung on the right is someone who was a heavy smoker. And you can see what years of inhaling those chemicals did to those lungs. The tobacco industry is not your friend. And their business model is to get people addicted to their products young, and they'll buy those products for the rest of their life, no matter what happens to them. In World War II, the tobacco companies gave out millions and millions and millions of cigarettes to our soldiers because they were patriotic. No, they weren't. They were marketing, and they got hundreds of thousands or millions of our soldiers addicted to those cigarettes. Now, though, through education campaigns, you guys don't want cigarettes. Your generation doesn't want them. You see them as stinky, obnoxious things, which is good, right? Some of you might smoke, but as a generation, you're going to want it. But the tobacco companies are upset about that because they count on the profits if you buy in their devices. So they looked around and they found a replacement. And they wanted something they could continue to sell to you that gets you addicted. And this is what they came up with. The electronic cigarette, or the Juul, or the vape, or the puff bar, or whatever it's called today, is just another system to deliver nicotine. The same addictive drug in cigarettes now comes pure in the vape. And if you're vaping at 12 or 14 or 15 or however old you are, you're going to get just as addicted to the nicotine as in adults smoking cigarettes. Actually, even more, because as my daughters tell me, they have friends who vape all night. They vape in class, they vape in the car. You can't smoke in bed at night. You can't smoke in the classroom. But young people today can vape 24/7 and get severely addicted. And then Juul came along and invented, I can't point to it, but they invented that little device in the center that looks like the USB on purpose, so that you could use these things without being caught. And of course, these companies, when we call them out, they stand up and lie to us. The people making these things are liars. I'm not afraid to say that. I don't think they're good people. They say they never intended these things to be used by teenagers. Over and over and over again, Juul and the other companies have claimed that they never, ever dreamt that teenagers would use these things. Well, my friends, would you look at this ad and tell me who that's made for? Is that made for somebody my age? Is that made for a chain smoker, hoping that the electronic cigarette can help them stop chain smoking? No, it's made to make it look attractive to you and to your friends, to get you to want to do it. These are x-rays of someone here in San Diego who almost died. On the left are healthy lung x-rays. On the right is someone who filled their lung with a vaping liquid. It's not water, guys. It's an oily liquid full of chemicals. It is not water vapor, and it collects in your lungs. This guy had cancer and from smoking, and they had to cut holes in him to save his life. And yet he still smokes. And there's only one reason, because the power of the nicotine addiction is so strong, even the cancer treatment and suffering he went through isn't enough to get him to stop. And I'll repeat myself. If you or your friends are vaping today, eventually, if not already, but eventually, you will get every bit as addicted or even more addicted to the nicotine that this guy did. India banned them last year. That's amazing to me. India is not known for being a very advanced country, but they banned it. And we in this country, we can't figure it out. There are smokers, cigarette smokers, who went to the e-cigarettes and vapes thinking it would help them. And now they're going back to cigarettes because they realize they're consuming more nicotine than ever by using the vapes. That sounds ridiculous and made up, but it's not. And many of you, or most of you, don't know that for hundreds of years before the modern pesticides were invented, nicotine was a very common natural pesticide. Nicotine, this chemical that you can buy at the store and smoke and put in your body, or vape and put in your body, has been used for hundreds of years as an insecticide. That's how dangerous it is. So next time somebody's telling you how cool vaping is, I want you to think for a second, how truly cool is it to be sucking on a vaporized liquid that's actually a pesticide that can get you addicted? These are some commercial pesticides made from nicotine. And just because something can be purchased and just because something can be put in your body doesn't mean it's intelligent to do so. Marijuana. I had friends who smoked it. I never have. I was tempted numerous times. Sometimes I was the only one in the group who didn't, but I already knew I wanted to go in law enforcement. So I made choices that were going to help me go into law enforcement. I knew using dope was never going to help me. But my friends smoked weed to get stupid. And the weed they smoked was like 5% potent. And they smoked it and they got plenty stoned on it, right? It's not clean. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's not full of tar and carcinogens and nasty things. It's stored in the body. Lots of science showing that it might damage your chromosomes if you use it. It's listed as an addictive drug by American psychologists and psychiatrists, and I'm very angry at them because they're silent. In this world where you're being told every day that marijuana is safe and it's herbal and it's a medicine and it's harmless, in the Bible for American psychologists and psychiatrists, where they list every mental disorder, they list it as an addictive drug. But they're not out there telling you that, and that makes me angry. And the potency of the weed today is insane. I mentioned my friends were smoking 5% weed back in the day. 4 and 5%. That got you plenty high. But the plant today has been modified. It's not the natural plant that you find out in nature. This plant's been modified and modified and modified. And the leafy plant now produces 20, 25, even 30% THC, which means if you're smoking just a plant joint, you're getting 5 times the THC of someone who smoked a joint back when I was young. And I tell adult marijuana smokers that, or people who smoked back when they were kids, and it blows their minds to think about you guys smoking weed that is that strong. Now, if you're smoking the shatter or the wax or the oil, we're talking potency 50, 80, 90%. It shouldn't even have to say, it should be called a different drug. It's like crack. It's so much more powerful. You have no idea how much you're getting into your body when you're using this stuff. Lots of studies showing linkages between this hardcore THC usage and psychosis and mental illness. American Psychological Association, not big friends of the DEA, publishes an article, Marijuana and the Developing Brain. They're not seeing this same damage in adult brains, guys. They're seeing this damage in teenagers like you who use this stuff because you're told it's harmless. But then later on in life, scientists might look at you and go, oh, your brain's a little different now because you smoked a bunch of weed when you were a teenager. And just because you don't notice that it's changing your brain doesn't mean it's not. The damage is incremental. It happens a little bit at a time. Scientific American, a legitimate article, link between pot smoking as a teenager and psychosis. In Harvard, they did a study of students, and they studied the amygdalas in their brains. And every student that had smoked weed had a smaller amygdala than the students who didn't smoke weed. And the more weed you smoked, the smaller it was. And the amygdala is your emotional control center in the brain. And to be a successful, balanced human being, you need to have a healthy amygdala. And of course, the cannabis gummies and the edibles. Now, why would someone make it like this? And the only reason I can think of is to entice really young kids, like 9, 10, 11, to use this stuff. And of course, the kids are told, somebody tells them, gives them a gummy, hey, it's still strong, don't eat the whole thing, just nibble the leg and you'll get high. But if you eat marijuana, it takes a while to get, it just doesn't go in your, if you smoke it, it goes into your body through your lungs very quickly. If you eat it, it has to be metabolized through your liver. And that can take up to an hour. So someone who's using an edible, like a little kid, he nibbles on that gummy bear, eats the leg and doesn't feel anything. So then he eats the other leg and doesn't feel anything. Then he eats the whole thing. Well, an hour later, now he's got 5 or 10 joints worth of THC going through his or her little body, and the parents are taking her to the hospital. Ecstasy, MDMA, Molly, super popular drug in the schools. Everyone says, oh, it's so harmless. And the drug traffickers have always made it look like candy. They can make this drug in a crystal or a powder or whatever form they want, but they always make it look like candy because they want it to be attractive to you. This drug has always been marketed to you. They want you looking at that green bubble in an apple, believing it's safe. But guys, anybody can take a drug and get a press and stamp out pills with some food coloring and then offer it to you and tell you it's good and it's safe. It could have ecstasy in there, it could have fentanyl in there, it could have rat poison, it could have nothing. You don't know. The person offering it to you doesn't know. They're lying to you when they say it's safe. And I'm almost done. And I'll finish up with some simple examples. Just something for you to think about. If you were at school and the school gave you burritos for lunch and you open the packages and they look like that, I don't think you'd eat them. The mold on that burrito would send a signal to your brain, I'm not hungry anymore. And we all learned that at about 2 years old. You could put that moldy burrito in front of a 2-year-old toddler and she's gonna go, ooh, icky, and not eat it, right? We all got that at 2 years old. Don't put this in your body, it can make you sick, it can harm you. Well, how can it be if we all learned that at 2 years old, that any of you could be willing at 15, 16, 18, 20 to go to a party and somebody walks up with a drug that you now know could kill you or destroy your life or kill the friend next to you, and not go, ooh, icky, or whatever, I'm not doing it. Not have a profound fear. not gag at the idea of trying to put that drug in your body. Another simple example. I've been talking really fast today. I might have given some of you a headache, how fast I'm going. But let's pretend I've given you a headache and you're at home with grandma. And you go to your grandma after this presentation and say, man, this guy Rocky gave me a headache, grandma, do you have something for it? And she hands you this little box of aspirin from her purse. And she takes the little pills out and hands them to you. You're about to take them. And you look on the side of the box and it says expires 1955. And I don't think any of you would take those aspirin. I think you're going to go, you know what, grandma, my headache just went away. I'm good. You'd give those aspirin back or you'd throw them away. Because simply seeing that expiration date would be enough to tell your brains, oh, no, this could be dangerous. That's not worth it. I'm not going to take these. Right? But when somebody offers you an ecstasy or a Xanax, or it looks like ecstasy or Xanax, whatever, and they tell you, oh, it's good and it's safe, your brain doesn't go, oh, no, it could be dangerous. And I need it to. I need you guys to be respecting yourselves and thinking about this. Something's really wrong in our culture. This is in Connecticut from 2 years ago now. And some guy walked into a park, some stranger walked into a park with a big bag, and he was handing out these hand-rolled cigarettes. They looked like joints. He was walking around handing them out, telling people these were homemade spice cigarettes that he was giving away because he wanted people to try the drug. Now, I think if a guy had walked to the park with a bag of hot dogs and the students didn't know where it came from, none of them would have taken the hot dogs. You'd say, no thanks, or you take it and you throw it away. You don't eat food from strangers, right? But he's offering a drug, and 110 young people smoked those things and overdosed and ended up in the hospital. And I don't even know how to process that. 110 young people that probably wouldn't have eaten a hot dog that guy offered them, smoked this drug he gave them and almost killed themselves. That tells me something's seriously wrong in our culture. Now, unfortunately, I can't see who's listening. I can't see your faces, but I'm going to tell you something. I do these lectures because I believe in you and your potential. I really do. I believe you have what it takes to accomplish your dreams and accomplish your goals if you work towards them, right? But that responsibility is yours, and I support you in it. But honestly, guys, it doesn't matter what I believe or what your teachers believe or your parents believe. It matters what you believe. Do you believe in yourselves enough? Do you believe in your goals enough? Do you believe in your dreams enough to make choices, maybe difficult ones, but make choices that'll keep you on the path to success in your life? Because saying no to the friends at the party, as difficult as that might sound, is a smart choice, and it's easy once you make it. Because if you damage yourself later in life, those people aren't going to be there for you. If you don't accomplish your dreams because of some consequence of the drugs they encourage you to take, those people are not going to be there helping you. And this is where I'm going to finish, my last slide. I made a lot of mistakes as a father. I have a lot of regrets, things I wish I could do differently with my daughters. But about 12 years ago now, I went to my youngest daughter's school and I gave her a presentation. Afterwards, when she was 8 or 9, she came home and gave me this picture on the left that she drew of me. And that's a treasure for me, not so much because she's the best artist, but because as a father, my little girl drew a picture of me as her hero and gave it to me. My little girl wanted me to know that I was her hero. And now we argue about tattoos and piercings, and she's 20 years old, and life changes. But I didn't screw that up, and that will always be a treasure for me. The note on the right, I took from the wallet of a man I arrested some years ago who was a prescription drug addict. And I arrested him in handcuffs. He's in my office. He's crying. I'm searching his stuff. I go through his wallet. And I find this little note. And I say, what is this note? And he goes, it's from my son. And I said, how old is your son? He says, 6 years old. And I got so angry at him. I started yelling at him. I have no business yelling at this guy, but it became Father, Rocky instead of Agent Rocky. And I got so mad at him. I said, man, you're ruining your kid's life. And he started crying. And he said he knew he was ruining his son's life. He knew he wanted to stop. He told me he was carrying this note with him to try to help stop. But every time he tried to stop, his own brain said, no, give me more drugs. And guys, what that note from a 6-year-old child, how much pain does a 6-year-old child have to be in to write that note? Because what that note really says to me is, dear dad, stop ruining my life. Dear dad, stop hurting me. Not the kid's fault, the dad's choice. And the dad got to live with that nightmare. So, what choices do you want to make? What sort of futures do you want to have in your lives? Do you want to make choices that hopefully someday take you to a place where you bring strength and love and support to your own loved ones? Or are you willing to make choices today or tomorrow or whenever that might put you on a path to bring nothing but pain and misery and suffering to your own loved ones? And that's the end of my presentation. Now, I'll talk for just a second about becoming a DEA agent. It's not actually that complicated. When I was young, I had to look it up in the phone book and call DEA, but you guys have the internet. So if you're at all interested in a DEA career or an FBI career, you can go on the internet and find these websites and learn about all the recruiting requirements, all the things you need to do. You need to have a 4-year degree. DEA doesn't care what you study. We just want you to have a 4-year degree, decent grades, be physically fit, stay out of trouble, make smart choices, and show that you want the job. And those are the basic requirements. And they're all there for you on the website if you want to pursue those choices. I am super happy with my career choices. Like I said, I was going to do this for a few years and change, and I'm still doing it. And I'm still happy about it. It's been giving me the opportunity to feel like I'm giving back to society. I've been able to travel around the world. I get paid really well. When I retire, I'll have a good pension. So, it's been a good choice for me. And if any of you are interested, believe in yourselves. And you'll never get the job if you don't ask for it. And a lot of my friends told me I was wasting my time and what was I doing? Because DEA was never going to hire me, that I was just going to get my feelings hurt. Well, you know what? I did it, and I put effort into it, and I got this job. So I'll stop sharing now and then see if there are any comments or questions.
Thank you, Agent Rocky. Do any of our participants have any questions? You can put them in the Q&A and I can read them to Agent Rocky. We also have some certificates for our participants. Do you have those, Rocky, or we can?
No, I don't have any certificates.
Oh, okay.
But if the students wanted to get a presentation for their school, or they wanted to do something virtual like this, or when COVID goes away, have me come out to school, just have their school reach out to DEA San Diego and ask for me. I'll go speak to a classroom. I'll speak to a grade level. I'll speak to a community group. And I need your help to get this message out. I need everyone who's listening to think about what I'm saying. Maybe it won't change your mind right away, but hopefully you learn some things that you didn't know, and you can use that information to protect yourselves and protect the people you care about.
Well, thank you for that very informative presentation, Rocky, and very emotional. Really appreciate that information.